Failure is scary. When you put effort into a project, tell countless people about it, and spend sleepless nights trying to succeed, defeat can be crushing. But if you're constantly afraid of a negative outcome, why bother pursuing anything? Your dream job, as an example, could be off the table because the effort would feel meaningless if you fail. You might end a promising relationship because you fear pain if it doesn't work out. In both of these cases, the potential of a bad outcome can keep you from pursuing something beautiful. Welcome back to Empowerment Junction podcast, where we dive into topics that inspire and motivate you to live your best life. I'm your host, Olivia Bassi, and today we're going to explore a topic that is close to my heart: embracing failure and feeling the fear but doing it anyway. In today's episode, I'll be referencing an article I wrote and a video I posted on YouTube about this very subject. If you haven't checked them out yet, I encourage you to do so after listening to this episode. Links will be in the show notes. Now, quite often, when faced with a challenge, we unconsciously sabotage our own chances of success. But why would you unconsciously do that to yourself? It could be for these three main reasons. Number one, you just don't feel ready to take on the responsibility that goes with success. Number two, you identify yourself as a loser. In a perverse sort of way, don't want to take on the identity of a winner. And the third reason, if you don't try too hard, you always have an excuse for failure. Now, fear and exhilaration go hand in hand, and fear of failure is very common. In fact, according to a social research survey of more than 1,000 people, a lot of people are more afraid of failing than they are of spiders, being home alone, and even the supernatural, like ghosts. But the anxiety can be debilitating if you let it in. It's important to be mindful of your fears and reframe them so that they don't negatively impact your life. Fear of failure is the number one reason people don't set goals or try new things. The fact is, as you start listening, there's nothing wrong with failing. Everybody, and I mean everybody, experiences failure, even the most successful people. In fact, particularly the most successful people, because they are the ones who keep trying. Now, for my new listeners, and thank you so much for joining. Thank you for those who've always been subscribing, liking, and sharing this podcast. We are reaching new heights. We're aiming for new heights. So thank you once again. If you're new to Empowerment Junction, let me give you a glimpse of what we are all about. Here, we discuss everything related to self-empowerment, personal development, personal improvement, growth, motivation, and how to navigate life's challenges with grace and ease, and much more. So whether you're looking to boost your confidence, enhance your productivity, or simply find inspiration to overcome life's challenges, you are in the right place. So, if you enjoy what you hear today, I invite you to like and subscribe to this podcast. And by all means, share it with your friends and colleagues and anybody else who you think might resonate with what we are talking about. And I'm sure together we can create a ripple effect of empowerment that extends beyond these audio waves. So, grab your drink and let's get started. So today, I want to start with a quote from the Roman emperor and philosopher Marcus Aurelius. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Marcus Aurelius was a Stoic philosopher, and this quote encapsulates the essence of Stoicism. It teaches us that obstacles are not just barriers, but can be transformed into pathways to progress. Now, this mindset is essential when we talk about embracing failure. Failure is often seen as the end of the road, but what if we started seeing it as just a bend in the road? Many successful people have faced failure head on and used it as a stepping stone to greatness. Take Thomas Edison, for example. He is famous for saying, "I have not failed. I have just found 10,000 ways that won't work." Edison's persistence led to the invention of the light bulb, revolutionizing the world. His story teaches us that failure is not the opposite of success, it's a part of it. Now, in my article, I discuss how to embrace failure and how embracing failure can be a powerful tool for personal growth. It's not about the fall, but how we rise after falling. Each failure is a lesson, a piece of the puzzle that brings us closer to our goals. So please do check out that article. As most of you know, I have a blog on Medium website, and I also have a blog on my website. But I'll attach this article as well, or a link to the article, as part of this episode's notes. Now let's talk about fear. Fear is a natural emotion, but it often holds us from achieving our full potential. For the believer, the Bible is very clear. God's rule is very clear. God states, "I have not given you a spirit of fear." And you know what God adds? "I have given you a spirit of power, love, and a sound mind." I'll repeat that. God states, "I have not given you a spirit of fear. I have given you a spirit of power, love, and a sound mind." So what does this mean? Or how can we put this into context into our lives? Now, there's a famous self-help book by Susan Jeffers, which I dipped into, that states, "Feel the fear and do it anyway." Now, Susan delves into this concept deeply, and she emphasizes that the only way to get rid of the fear of doing something is to go out and do it. Now, courage is not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. Everyone, there's nobody who doesn't feel it. Everyone feels fear, but successful people feel it and take action anyway. Now, in the YouTube video I posted on Wednesday, the 17th of July, I share a personal story about a time when fear almost stopped me from pursuing this podcast and starting my own consultancy business. I remember carrying out lots of research and reading books about successful people who have failed in big ways. I can confidently say there's certainly no shortage of famous examples. Michael Jordan, who was cut from the varsity basketball team in his sophomore year. Steve Jobs, fired from the company he founded. And of course, Oprah Winfrey, fired from a job as a television news anchor. Another prominent influential figure who spoke about overcoming fear and failure is J.K. Rowling. Now, before the success of Harry Potter, she faced numerous rejections from publishers. She once said, "It's impossible to live without failing at something unless you live so cautiously that you might as well not have lived at all, in which case you fail by default." Now, Rowling's story is a testament to the perseverance and resilience. Her failures did not define her, they actually refined her. So rationally, I know that failure is nothing to be ashamed of. In fact, it's an inevitable part of life and even a necessary step towards success and innovation. Irrationally, I still fear failure, and I know I'm not alone. But because of the additional resources, and because sometimes I have to tune into my spirituality and go to God, and God reminds me, I have not given you a spirit of failure. I have given you a spirit of power, love, and a sound mind. I remind myself and equip myself with that knowledge. And I know now that this is a necessary step towards my success and innovation. Now, as I began doing some research, I got into thinking that these failures before success stories aren't exactly a secret. Now, many people can relate to this. From a young age or from primary school onwards, we are bombarded with variations of what doesn't kill you, make you stronger. And if you don't succeed, and you keep trying. And I remember my classroom walls, and many walls I still see today, are plastered with inspirational quotes about overcoming defeat and learning from your mistakes. Rationally, I know that failure is nothing to be ashamed of. No, it's an inevitable part of life and even a necessary step towards success and innovation. Irrationally, I still fear it. And at some point or another, almost all of us have experienced this nagging self-doubt, made negative comparisons between ourselves and those around us, or felt that we are not talented enough, smart, or disciplined enough to reach our goals. Now, the irony is that these fears tend to become self-fulfilling prophecies. Research has shown a connection between the fear of failure and procrastination. Yes. Put your hand up now. And no, I'm not by myself. How many of us have procrastinated so many times because you're so afraid of taking the next step? That means that the more anxiety we feel about failing to reach our goals, the less likely we are to take action towards achieving them. It's a completely irrational reaction, but as anyone who has experienced this kind of paralysis can tell you, it's a hard one to resist. So, instead of putting together yet another inspiring list of people who have failed and went on to succeed, I decided I want to answer a question. What can we do to overcome fear of failure? Hence this episode. Now, there are lots of articles and books and resources out there on this subject, but most end up being about variations of the same cliches most of us have had all our lives. For the record, I know it is not at all helpful to tell someone who fears failure to think positively or be more assertive. If it was that easy, we wouldn't be Googling how to overcome fear of failure in the first place. Or I wouldn't have clients telling me, how do you overcome fear of failure? Or I wouldn't even be making this episode. Now, for this episode, I combed through pages of TED Talks, blogs, podcasts, articles to find the best concrete, proven strategies for overcoming fear of failure. Now, they've all actually worked for people, and I know everybody is different and at different stages. And many people who wanted to break the cycle of self-defeat and avoidance. I've even used them myself, and I hope you find some of these useful as I have. And in summary, I've summed them up as follows. 3 ways. The first strategy is to face it. Face your fear. Now, face your fear isn't exactly a new concept. However, it's a lot more straightforward to face a fear of heights or spiders than it is to face a fear of failure. Now, I want to share a story I came across, or of somebody who I know is very close to him and who I love very dearly, as most of you know. Now, my husband. Now, someone gave me this strategy, a new spin, and made me think differently about how I can face fear in my own life. Now, I'll start by saying, before I share my husband's story, I'll start by saying one of my favorite quotes from Robin Sharma states, "We reclaim our power by doing what we fear." Now, if you go back to the spiritual side, for the believers I'm talking to, God has clearly stated that I've given you a spirit of power, a spirit of love, and a sound mind. I have not given you a spirit of fear. So, number one, I face it by rejecting that spirit of fear. When fear overcomes me, I equip myself with God's word. I equip myself with that Bible verse. I equip myself with the knowledge that my Maker, the Most High, who knows my purpose and my destiny, has equipped me with a spirit of power and of love and a sound mind, and not fear. So, I'm about to tell you my husband's story. And believe me, it works tremendously. So, since childhood, my husband's biggest fear was maths, always mathematics. So, not surprisingly, the first chance he got to say goodbye to the subject in school, he grabbed it with all he could. Now, a couple of years ago, due to unforeseen circumstances or exigencies, he had to take up additional responsibility of handling finance and accounts for his business. And of course, he didn't make the choice of facing his fear. It was thrust upon him. Now, I was there observing, obviously still working. I've taught maths. I love numbers. Some people might know it was already a subject that I chose to teach back in my teaching days. I love numbers. There's a certain element, because when people do your accounting for you, you pay people to do it. But when it certainly is put in your face and you have to do it, you have to face it. You have to face that fear. So, on hindsight, he was glad he was presented this fear, because he didn't think he could do it. But he did it anyway. He took up the opportunity, took up the challenge. And I can tell you today, he is not only comfortable with doing his own accounts, but he actually enjoys crunching numbers. Now, having slain one of his greatest fear, he now feels like a little bit invincible, like a superhero. Now, looking back, every time he mustered enough courage to face his fears, he reclaimed his power. And I've had this discussion with him many times. So, when you face your fear, be it cycling, swimming, or whatever, public speaking is a big one, or blogging, to succeed. And even me, I remember and I'll share that story about when I started my consultancy and my podcast. It's always that first step. To succeed, you first have to conquer that fear. And I'm sure you've done the same as well. So what can we take from this, or what can we learn from this little glimpse of a story? That most fears aren't real in that way. You think they are, because you tell yourself, I can't do this. It's something that I've never been able to do it. But the minute you start doing it, you'll surprise yourself. It's always a story you tell yourself, and you can choose to stop repeating that story. Choose to stop listening. Now, the second strategy is to externalize it. Sometimes overcoming fear is a losing battle. No matter how much we try to force it, it wills our way out of it. Now, the voice of doubt and negativity won't go away. This second strategy is less getting rid of fear and more about learning to live with it. Giving your fear a voice, or at least an email address. Yes. I've already told you, I do name some of my challenges. So name it. Give it a name. Now, it's important to understand that knowledge is not destiny. No. Empowerment Junction is about giving you that knowledge, but it's not your destiny. Knowing what you feel is important, but that doesn't mean that these feelings are truth. And that's a key. Now, how do you do this? Use fear to focus, but don't let it become your focus. Fear is it's a powerful sensation. It can be a great asset, or it can hold you back. Now use it as an alert system. It signals where you need to put attention, loose ends that need to tie out, or weaknesses in your plan or product. Now once you've gotten the signal, focus on it directly and let go of the uncomfortable sensation. Now this week, try listening to fear as a source of wisdom. Then write down the signal and your response. Plan to address whatever triggered it. Does prompt attention to the signal relieve the stressful aspect, clear your mind, and catalyze you forward? If you can, go and listen to my YouTube video, and I've given other strategies and tips on how to do this. Failure is as inevitable as death and taxes, and can make us just as uncomfortable. But each failure opens new doors and presents new ideas and new ways. So instead of getting stuck on the failure itself, focus your attention on the new idea or the new research method or the data that you've collected that came with it and the new doors that opened. I've already told you, every new experience is a data collection exercise to me. Yes, even a data collection exercise of people and situations. So, the best thing to do at this stage is to focus your attention and consider, as an example, your past failures. What did you learn from your past failures? Could you be where you are now without them? Write them down. I've already discussed strategies and ways of doing this. Journaling is powerful. Reflective journaling is a powerful technique. Some people can do it as a vlog. If you're a vlogger, do that. Look at your life last year, where you are now. Empowerment Junction is to help you with those stages. If you're vlogging, look at your vlogs last year. If you're journaling, look at your journaling last year. We're now in July. This is a critical stage. This is a stage where perhaps you're asking yourself, we're almost done with 2024, believe it or not. What milestones or what goals did you set at the beginning of the year? How are you getting on with those goals? Would you like a repeat of last year's failures of those goals, or are you aiming to set better targets and strategies to achieve those goals? Now, you've probably learned more from failure than any other source of wisdom. So rather than feeling dread and discomfort, embrace failure's value as a teacher. Get curious about the research, the data it offers, and open to where it leads you next. You may even find you fail less when you don't fear it. Yes, powerful. Now, the last strategy is to ignore it. And this is my final strategy for today's episode. As I say, go to my YouTube video. There's specific tips I've shared that might help you and might be able to build more into these strategies. So the last strategy is to ignore failure. Now, the first two strategies for overcoming fear is to face it and externalize it. And when I'm saying ignore fear, I mean this always involved ways to change how you think about it and react to your anxieties and self-doubt. But sometimes the best thing you can do is to ignore it. Let go of worrying about, number one, what people will think, or your own expectations, or even thinking about the outcome at all, and just focus doing one thing. Focus on the doing. If you set, as an example, you set some key goals, or to go to the gym, or to start journaling, and you're now in January, and you're now in July, and you're realizing that perhaps you're not meeting those goals as regularly as you wanted, you'll have a voice that will come to tell you, why bother? Or you might have somebody saying, you set these goals, but you're not really doing well with these goals. What's the point? Maybe you need to reset those. No, go back to those goals. Go back and think, why are you not meeting those goals? Look at, reevaluate, refocus, and focus on doing one thing and think, okay, if it was, as an example, it was my goal to go to the gym. I've been going to the gym, I've tried the biking, I've tried swimming, I've tried running, I've tried the treadmill, I've tried going to the weights, tried going to different classes. Perhaps it's time to whittle it down and focus on one area. How do you do this? I'll take cycling as an example. I'm not a big fan of cycling, and I realize I need to do cycling because there will be certain times, so something might happen as life happens. You might have an injury in one area, and the doctor might say it's time to step away from this. It could be you've hurt your hamstring when you're running, and now you need to either focus on cycling or focus on running or focus on swimming, I beg your pardon. So what you need to do is find new ways to swim. So focus on that one thing and keep doing that one thing until you become better. So you set a goal to go to the gym. Now go back to that one area and perfect that one area. Go and look at, if swimming is the thing, go and look at different YouTube videos of swimmers, how to improve that swimming technique. If you've got extra money, take up a swimming expert pass or take up some swimming lessons and become a better swimmer. So which means you're still meeting your goal of being in the gym, but you are enhancing your swimming techniques. So which means you are still meeting that goal and you're focusing on the one thing. And then you can revisit that goal at the end of maybe 2-3 months down the line. You're feeling like, wow. And because you're focusing on one area, you're becoming better at that one area. You're facing that fear, or you are ignoring that voice that was telling you you're not good enough, and you're facing it, and you're going through that motions of thinking, I'm going to be good enough at one thing, just the one thing for now, and then further down the line I might have to take up all the other options. So when you do that, you re-energize yourself because, number one, you're learning something new, or you're relearning something new. You're relearning new swimming techniques, if it's breaststroke, if it's front crawl, if it's whatever you're doing in that pool. It's something new, and it's re-energizing you, and it's refocusing you, and it's encouraging you to keep going back to the gym and there's a new buzz to it. And you can do this, you can break this down the year. Going to the gym doesn't have to subscribe to just one thing. Find new ways of loving that one specific thing. So I'll carry on because I do want to make this into a long episode. But again, break your goals down. Now, I'll carry on by saying I want to share 2 quotes from 2 of the best productivity blogs around that do an eloquent job of summarizing how to break out of the vicious circle of negative self-talk and procrastination, because I know this is part of why a lot of us are refusing to embrace failure. Now, in the article Getting Lost in Just Doing by Leo Bobata, and I'll touch the article, he gives the following advice. Just pick something to work on. Write something, draw something, program something, animate something, sew something. It doesn't matter. Anything that your heart is drawn to. Set an intention for this activity. I'm doing this out of compassion for the others, out of love for myself, to meet my commitment to so and so. Now get started. Begin actually doing it. Don't worry about whether you'll do it for 10 minutes or an hour. Don't worry about how good you'll be at it or what people will think of it. Whether you'll succeed or not, these are not relevant to the task. Now remember, go back to the swimming example as well and put this into play. Similarly, I found that James Clear urges us to set aside self-judgment and our constant comparison to others. Work and learn to embrace the process of creation. No matter what you spend your days doing, every morning you wake up and have a blank piece of paper to work with. Remember, that is key. Every day you wake up, it's a blessed day. You have a blank piece of paper to work on and to work with. You'll get to put your name on at the end, at the top, and fill it with your work. If what you write on your paper doesn't meet someone else's expectation, it is no concern of yours. The way someone else perceives what you do is a result of their own experience, which you can't control. Their own tastes and preferences, which you can't predict, and their own expectations, which you don't set. If your choices don't match their expectations, that is not your concern. I'll repeat that. If your choices don't match their expectations, that is not your concern. It's not yours. Your concern is to do the work, not to judge it. Your concern is to fall in love with the process, not to grade the outcome. Keep your eyes on your own paper. In other words, if you're driving, remember that the driving analogy is the best one. When you're driving, and I'll give the motorway example, you're in your lane. You focus on your lane. You don't start looking, what's the other person doing on that side? No, you will lose control. So in the same way, apply this process that James Clear is using. Keep your eyes on your paper, so keep your eyes on your lane. Make a conscious decision to ignore fear. Or making a conscious decision to ignore fear may not sound like the most exciting strategy, and it certainly isn't the easiest. We have evolved to pay attention to our fear and anxiety. Imagine what would have happened if our ancestors had said, you know what? I'm just going to ignore my fear of that saber-toothed tiger over there and focus entirely on the beautiful rock art I'm creating. I mean, our species wouldn't have survived that long. We won't be here. But in the modern world, fear often harms us more than it helps us. Now, actively choosing to ignore that fear and focus on the task at hand is a powerful strategy to keep moving forward. Now, here's how to get started. In this article I read, and I'll touch it again, called Productivity Tricks for the Neurotic, Manic, Depressive, and Crazy Like Me, productivity guru Tim Ferriss outlines each step of his own ritual for dealing with doubt and negative self-talk. It's a simple yet effective way to get clarity and momentum when you're feeling overwhelmed by your own expectations or those of others. Number 1, wake up at least 1 hour before you have to be at your computer screen. Email is the mind killer. Now, number 2, make a cup of tea and sit down with a pencil, pen, and paper. Number 3, write down the 3 things and no more that are making you most anxious or uncomfortable. They are often things that have been punted from one day's to-do list to the next, and so on. Most importantly, usually most uncomfortable with some chance of rejection or conflict. Number 4, for each time, ask yourself, if this were the only thing I accomplished today, would I be satisfied with my day? Remember that blank piece of paper James Clear is talking about. This is it. Every morning you wake up, you've got a blank piece of paper to fill it in. Number 5, look only at the items you've answered yes to for at least one of these questions. Number 6, block out 2 to 3 hours to focus on one of them for today. Let the rest of the urgent but less important stuff slide. It will be there tomorrow. Number 7, to be clear, block out 2 to 3 hours to focus on one of them for today. This is one block of time. Cobbling together 10 minutes here and there to add up 120 minutes does not work. And number 8, if you get distracted or start procrastinating, don't freak out and downward spiral. Just gently come back to your number 1 to do. This certainly isn't an exhaustive list of ways to overcome a fear of failure, but these 3 strategies, face it, externalize it, ignore it, are a great place to start. Have you tried any of these strategies before? Are there others that work for you? Please consider sharing it with our community and listeners. Now, as we wrap up this episode, I want to leave you with 5 actionable steps to embrace failure and overcome fear. Number 1, reframe your mindset. Start seeing failure as a learning opportunity rather than a setback. Reframe your mindset. And if you're a believer, God says it very, very clearly. I have given you a spirit of power, love, and a sound mind. In fact, take a post-it note and write that down. That could be your mantra, or that should be your mantra as a believer. Number 2, take small steps. Break down your goals into manageable tasks to reduce the fear of taking action. Small steps. I've given you strategies and tips of how to do that. Number 3, reflect and learn. After each failure, take time to reflect on what went wrong and how you can improve. This journal that I've emphasized from the beginning of this podcast, it's powerful. A journal is a powerful way to do this. Number 4, very critical. Surround yourself with positivity. And I know this can be hard, but find it. Engage with people who uplift and support you. Number 5, be kind to yourself. Remember that everyone makes mistakes. Everyone, including me, many times. I've given you the many examples. Go back to my previous episodes. There's many times. Some of them I've laughed about them. Some of them I've cried about them. Some of them I've just thought, oh, there's no point. But here I am. So be patient and compassionate with yourself on this journey. And with that said, I want to end by thanking you again for joining me on this episode of Embracing Failures and Feeling the Fear. Remember, failure is not the end, and fear is not a stop sign. They are both part of the journey towards success. Be sure to check out my article and YouTube video for more insights and personal stories and personal tips and other strategies. If you enjoyed this episode, if you're new here, please remember to subscribe. If you can leave a review, if you feel comfortable, please do so. And even better, please share it with someone who you think might need a little bit of an encouragement today. And lastly, I want to say thank you so much for those who've shared. Thank you so much for those who've subscribed. And thank you so much for those who keep embracing those failures and feeling the fear, but doing it anyway. Thank you once again. And I hope to see you on the next episode. My name is Olivia Bassi, and this is Empowerment Junction, Strategies for Empowered Living. Bye for now.